It was just past midnight when I heard the front door creak open. My wife, Jessica, who was 32 and worked as a marketing manager, strolled in with a giggle, her words slurring slightly. I feigned sleep on the couch, watching through half-closed eyes as she stumbled into the living room, her high heels clattering against the hardwood floor. The intoxicating smell of cheap cologne wafted through the air, intertwining with the lingering scent of her favorite perfume, a combination that now felt like a bitter reminder of her betrayal. I glanced at the clock on the wall, 12:17 a.m. Jessica had promised she'd be home by 10 p.m., but this wasn't the first time she had broken that promise. It felt like déjà vu, a recurring nightmare I couldn't escape. Each late night she came home was a stab to my gut, a growing feeling of betrayal gnawing at my heart. I had tried to brush it off at first, thinking maybe she was working late or out with friends, but deep down, I knew better. For months, I had noticed the signs, her increasingly distant demeanor, the secretive glances at her phone, and those hushed conversations that abruptly ended when I walked into the room. But it was the way she dismissed my concerns that had solidified my suspicions. "You're just being paranoid," she would laugh, tossing her head back, her golden curls shimmering in the light. But now, I was done playing the fool. As she swayed slightly, I could see a hint of guilt flicker across her face when she spotted me. "Oh, hey babe. You're still up," she exclaimed, attempting a casual tone that felt forced. I could barely muster a response, my heart racing as I debated my next move. Should I confront her now or wait until morning? My mind raced back to earlier that evening, the moment I'd finally had enough. After a gut-wrenching week of sleepless nights and anxious days, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I had installed a tracking app on her phone, something I felt dirty doing but necessary to find out the truth. It was a desperate measure, but love can drive you to madness. I couldn't sit idly by while my marriage crumbled. My heart thudded in my chest as I checked the app, and it confirmed my worst fears. She had left the office hours ago, not to return home, but to head to an address I recognized all too well, Jason's apartment. Jason was a 34-year-old graphic designer, a friend she always spoke so highly of, claiming he was just a work buddy. But I had always sensed a spark in her eyes when she mentioned him, and now it all clicked into place. "Are you okay? You seem tense," Jessica said, arching an eyebrow as she plopped down next to me on the couch. I could smell the faint remnants of alcohol and something else, something I couldn't quite place but knew I didn't like. "Just tired," I replied, forcing a yawn and stifling the urge to shake her and demand answers. She flashed a bright smile, the kind that used to light up my world but now felt like a mask hiding a million secrets. "I had a great time with the girls tonight. You should have come," she said, her voice bubbling with false cheer. "We went to that new club downtown, and oh my god, you wouldn't believe the crazy things that happened." "Right. Crazy things like what?" I asked, my voice laced with an edge I couldn't suppress. She hesitated for a moment, and I could see the gears turning in her mind as she tried to fabricate a story. "Oh, you know, just dancing and drinks. The usual." I leaned back, crossing my arms and watching her, trying to gauge her reaction. "Did you see anyone you know?" I asked casually, though every fiber of my being was screaming for the truth. "No, just some random people," she said, too quickly, a hint of nervousness slipping through her facade. I bit back a bitter laugh. A random encounter at Jason's apartment felt like an understatement. "You sure?" I pressed, my heart pounding louder now. Jessica shot me a confused look, her eyes narrowing. "Why are you asking me this? I told you I was with the girls." I stood up, the tension crackling between us like static. "Yeah, but I don't believe you." My voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of my accusation. "I've seen the texts. I know where you were, Jess." Her expression shifted, and for a brief moment, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, fumbling for her phone. "Your phone," I replied, pointing at the device in her hand. "You can try to lie to me, but the truth is out there, and I'll find it." In that moment, I felt a rush of adrenaline, the realization that I was about to uncover the full extent of her betrayal. It was as if a dam had broken within me, releasing years of trust and love that had been poisoned by deceit. I was determined to confront the reality, no matter how painful it might be. "Get some sleep, Jessica. Tomorrow, we'll talk," I said, my voice steady but low, a warning wrapped in the guise of a suggestion. She nodded slowly, the facade slipping as she realized the gravity of the situation. I turned away, not allowing myself to look back as I retreated to our bedroom, the darkness swallowing me whole. I felt the weight of betrayal heavy on my chest, knowing that the truth would come crashing down like a tidal wave. And come morning, there would be no escaping it. The game was on, and I was ready to expose the lies that had taken root in the very fabric of our marriage. Morning light crept through the blinds, casting stripes of sunlight across the floor. I lay awake in bed, the events of the night before replaying in my mind like a broken record. I was filled with a mix of anxiety and anticipation, knowing I had to confront Jessica about her late-night escapades. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the room, I felt a surge of determination. Today was the day I would uncover the truth. I could hear Jessica moving around the house, her footsteps echoing softly in the hallway. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. My heart raced, but I had resolved to stay calm, to present my case with the composure of a lawyer in a courtroom. I knew I had to approach her delicately to get her to confess without putting up defenses immediately. Finally, I emerged from our bedroom, finding Jessica in the kitchen, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She looked refreshed, the shadows from last night's debauchery fading as she smiled up at me. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, as if nothing had happened. The sunlight danced on her hair, illuminating the little flecks of gold that seemed to sparkle in the early morning light. But behind her cheerful demeanor, I could sense a current of tension. "Hey," I replied, my voice steady but my stomach twisted in knots. "Can we talk for a second?" "Sure," she said, flashing a smile that felt forced. "What's up?" I gestured towards the dining table, and she followed, the cheerful smile slowly fading as I took a seat across from her. I pulled my phone from my pocket, the app revealing the damning details still fresh in my mind. "Last night," I began, "you weren't with the girls, were you?" She opened her mouth to respond, but I continued before she could utter a word. "You were at Jason's place. I tracked your phone." The admission hung in the air like an unwelcome guest, and I watched as her expression shifted, a mixture of shock and something else flickering in her eyes. "Are you serious? You tracked me," she exclaimed, her voice laced with incredulity. "That's such an invasion of privacy, don't you think? Is it an invasion when you're out fucking another man?" I shot back, my voice raising slightly. "Do you even realize how far you've gone?" Jessica recoiled slightly, a flash of guilt crossing her face. I wasn't," she stammered, struggling to find the right words, her hands trembling slightly. "Don't lie to me, Jessica. I know what you were doing," I pressed, keeping my tone even but firm. "You think I'm clueless, but I've seen enough to know when something is off." Her defenses began to crumble, and she sank into her chair, a defeated look crossing her features. "Okay, fine, but it's not what you think," she insisted, her voice shaky. "I wasn't cheating. Jason was just helping me with work." "Helping you with work?" I scoffed, crossing my arms over my chest. "At midnight? You expect me to believe that?" Tears pooled in her eyes, and for a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. This was the woman I had loved, the one I had built a life with. But the pain of betrayal surged back, overwhelming any lingering feelings of affection. "Please, just hear me out," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I was going to tell you. I was going to end things before it went too far." "Too far?" I echoed, disbelief coursing through me. "You're already in too deep, Jess. This isn't just a mistake you can wave away. You've betrayed me. I can't just forget that." In that moment, something unexpected happened. Just as I thought I had her cornered, a mischievous glimmer appeared in her eyes. "Okay, you want the truth. Here it is," she said, leaning closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Last night wasn't just about work. I was with Jason, yes, but..." A wave of anger surged through me, but I forced myself to listen, curiosity piquing despite the betrayal stinging my heart. "But what?" I demanded. "But he didn't know," she continued, her voice almost taunting now, a smirk playing on her lips. "He thought I was still with you. I told him I was unhappy, that you were boring and neglectful. You know how our life has been, like a rut. I thought maybe a little fun would spice things up." "A little fun?" I thundered, rising from my seat. "You call that fun? You're risking everything for some cheap thrill?" She met my gaze, unflinching now. "You don't get it, do you? I wanted to feel something again. I wanted excitement. And you haven't even noticed how much I've changed." I took a step back, the shock of her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. "How could you do this to me, Jess? After everything we've been through? Because you've been so wrapped up in your own life," she shot back, her voice rising with defiance. "You think you're the only one struggling? I felt so alone. You didn't even care enough to ask about my day, about my feelings." I was suffocating. The twist of her argument struck me dumb for a moment. I had been busy with work and responsibilities, but I never thought it would drive her to seek solace in another man's arms. "So you thought cheating was the answer?" I asked, my voice quieter now, laced with disbelief. "It wasn't just about cheating," she insisted. "It was about connection, about feeling alive. And then I got carried away." "Carried away?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You're acting like you were just swept off your feet by some romance. You made a choice, Jess. You chose to betray me. She sighed, her shoulders slumping as the bravado faded. I know I messed up, okay? But I'm not the only one to blame. You've pushed me away. You're not the same man I fell in love with. Maybe that's because I had no idea you were feeling this way, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. You should have talked to me instead of sleeping with another man. Talk? You think that would have worked? We've been stuck in this monotonous routine, and I thought you'd never change, she snapped, frustration bubbling over. You didn't even try. As the argument escalated, a silence fell over us, filled with tension. I looked into her eyes, searching for some semblance of the woman I had loved, but all I saw was a stranger wrapped in denial. The betrayal had seeped too deep, and the cracks in our relationship were now gaping chasms. I don't know if I can do this anymore, I said, my voice heavy with resignation. You've broken my trust. I can't look at you the same way. I can fix this. I can change, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I'll do anything. But I shook my head, stepping back as the weight of her actions settled between us like a brick wall. I don't think you can fix this. You've already chosen your path, Jess. Now you have to face the consequences. With that, I turned away, the pain of betrayal cutting deeper than any knife ever could. I couldn't help but wonder if our love was worth saving or if it was already too late. As I walked away, the reality of our crumbling marriage loomed over me, an unbearable burden I knew would only grow heavier as the day unfolded. The rest of the day dragged on like molasses. Each tick of the clock felt heavier than the last, and my thoughts swirled like a storm inside my head. Jessica's admission gnawed at me, her betrayal felt like a slow poison coursing through my veins. I had loved this woman, trusted her with my heart, and now, I felt like a fool standing on the sidelines of a tragedy I could have prevented. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, I finally made my way to the living room. Jessica had retreated to the bedroom, and the silence between us felt oppressive. I could hear her quiet sobs through the closed door, a reminder of the chaos we had descended into. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me out of my spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Alex, my best friend. Dude, you okay? Heard you and Jess had a blowout. Let's grab a drink later. I stared at the screen for a moment, weighing my options. A drink sounded good, anything to numb the pain, if only for a little while. I quickly replied, agreeing to meet him at our usual bar, the Rusty Nail. I grabbed my jacket, trying to shake off the dread that had settled in my chest. But as I opened the door to leave, Jessica stood there, looking disheveled and fragile, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Where are you going? She asked, her voice soft but laced with a hint of desperation. I need to clear my head, I replied, not meeting her gaze. I can't do this right now. Please, she implored, stepping closer. Just give me a chance to explain. You don't understand what it's like to feel so trapped. Trapped. The word echoed in my mind, and I felt a flicker of anger flare up again. I'm not the one who decided to cheat, Jess, I said, my voice steady. You made that choice. You broke the trust between us. But I didn't want to hurt you, she cried, her voice rising. I just wanted to feel alive again. I thought if I could just have some fun. I didn't think it would go this far. Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I couldn't deny the truth behind them. Our life together had become a monotonous cycle of work, chores, and casual conversation. But that didn't justify her actions. You could have talked to me, I said, exasperated. We could have worked on it together. I was scared, she shouted, her frustration boiling over. Scared of losing you. Scared of admitting that I wasn't happy. Silence fell between us again, thick and suffocating. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. You should have trusted me, Jess. We could have figured this out. I know, she whispered, the fight leaving her as tears streamed down her face. I'm so sorry. I took a deep breath, the weight of her apology hanging in the air. Sorry isn't enough, I replied, my voice softer now, but still firm. You need to understand that your actions have consequences. I'll do anything to make it right, she pleaded, stepping forward and grabbing my arm. Please, don't walk away. I love you. Her words struck a chord deep within me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to see the woman I fell in love with, not this stranger standing before me. But love wasn't enough to erase the pain she had caused. Love isn't just words, Jessica, I said, pulling away from her grasp. It's actions. You've shown me where your loyalty lies, and right now, it's not with me. As I stepped past her and out the door, I felt a part of me breaking. Each step toward the car felt heavier than the last. I climbed into my vehicle, gripping the steering wheel as I fought back the waves of anger and sadness crashing over me. At the rusty nail, the familiar sounds of laughter and clinking glasses welcomed me, but I felt anything but festive. Alex was already seated at our usual booth, and as soon as he saw me, he raised his glass in greeting. "Hey, man, you look like hell," he said, gesturing for me to join him. "Thanks," I replied, sinking into the booth across from him. I ordered a whiskey and leaned back, staring at the condensation on my glass. "You have no idea. What happened? I thought you two were doing better." "Yeah, well, that was before I found out she's been cheating on me," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop myself. Alex's face fell, his eyes widening. "What? Are you serious?" "Dead serious. She was with some guy named Jason," I said, bitterness creeping into my tone. "Last night was the first time I confronted her about it." "Damn, man. I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, shaking my head. "I'm so angry, but part of me still wants to work it out. But how can I trust her again?" Alex nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of his drink. "Trust is tough to rebuild. You need to think about what you really want. Do you think you could ever forgive her?" "I want to. I love her, Alex. But what she did," I paused, the memory of Jessica's tears fresh in my mind. "I just don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again." "Give yourself time," he advised. "You don't have to decide right now. Just let it settle for a bit." As I sat there, nursing my drink, I felt the weight of my choices bearing down on me. The laughter around me felt distant, a world away from the chaos I was drowning in. I took a long sip, trying to drown the pain, but it lingered like an uninvited guest, refusing to leave. By the time I returned home, the house was eerily quiet. Jessica had retreated to our bedroom, and I found her curled up on the bed, a silent picture of despair. My heart ached at the sight, but anger flared again, ignited by the pain of betrayal. "I'm back," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. She turned to me, her eyes puffy and red. "Did you have fun?" I scoffed. "Fun? No, Jess. I didn't have fun. I just spent the night drowning my sorrows and trying to forget the fact that the woman I love has betrayed me." Her face fell at my words, and I could see the guilt etched into her features. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore," I said, my voice low but firm. "You need to understand the gravity of what you've done." "I do," she replied, her voice cracking. I want to make it right." "Then show me," I said, my patience fraying. "Because right now, I don't know if I can look you in the eyes without feeling this rage boil over again." A silence fell between us, thick with unspoken words. I could feel the tension in the air, like a taut string ready to snap. As I turned away, I felt a chill settle over the room, a sense of finality creeping in. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about our future and whether we could salvage what was left. Would I be able to forgive her? Could we rebuild the trust that had been shattered? Or was this the beginning of the end for us? The night stretched on, heavy with uncertainty, as I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Sleep was elusive, my mind racing with thoughts of Jessica and her betrayal. The house felt like a ghost town, every creak and whisper echoing my inner turmoil. I knew I couldn't put off the inevitable confrontation any longer. We had to face this head on. As dawn broke, spilling light into the dark corners of our home, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. The crisp morning air hit me like a splash of cold water, sharpening my senses. I strolled through the quiet streets, watching as neighbors began their routines, joggers, dog walkers, families preparing for the day. I felt like an outsider looking in, caught in a world that felt foreign after everything that had happened. I returned home with a sense of purpose. I needed answers, and more importantly, I needed closure. Jessica was in the kitchen, her back turned to me as she poured herself a cup of coffee. The aroma filled the air, but I couldn't shake the bitterness that lingered in my heart. "Can we talk?" I said, breaking the silence. She turned to face me, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Yeah, I think we need to." "Good. I don't want to dance around this anymore. We need to get everything out in the open," I replied, my tone firm but not hostile. "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath as she leaned against the counter. "I'll start. I messed up. I didn't think about the consequences when I got involved with Jason. I was just trying to fill a void I felt in our relationship. A void you could have told me about," I interjected, frustration bubbling up again. "You had every opportunity to talk to me. Instead, you chose to betray my trust in the worst way possible." "I know, and I hate myself for it," she cried, her voice trembling. "But please try to understand, I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it, that it was just a fling. I was wrong. I felt the anger rising within me, a fire I struggled to control. Just a fling? Jess, that's not how this works. You don't get to minimize what you did. You were sleeping with another man while I was left here, completely clueless. I get that. I do, she pleaded, her hands shaking as she spoke, but you have to believe me when I say I want to make this right. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship. I just need you to meet me halfway. Her desperation tugged at my heart, and for a moment, I could see the woman I had fallen in love with. But then the reality of her actions crashed over me like a wave, reminding me of the pain and humiliation I felt. Halfway? Is that really all you're asking for? A chance to prove yourself while I still bear the scars of your betrayal? Please, just give me a chance to explain everything, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was feeling lost, and Jason made me feel alive again. But that's all it was, an escape. It wasn't real. I want to fight for us, for our marriage. I took a step back, crossing my arms over my chest as I processed her words. What about Jason? What happens when you see him again? Can you promise me that you won't fall back into that trap? I don't want him, she said vehemently, shaking her head. I want you. I want our life together. I realize now how much I took for granted. Do you really believe that? Because I don't know if I can trust anything you say right now, I replied, my voice steady but laced with hurt. I'll prove it to you, she insisted, her voice rising again in urgency. I'll delete everything, cut all ties. You'll see, I'll make this right. Just give me the chance. Proving it won't be easy, Jess. Trust takes time to rebuild, and I don't know how long that will take for me, I said, my heart racing. You've opened up a chasm between us, and I'm not sure we can bridge it. I'll do whatever it takes, I swear, she promised, stepping closer. I love you, and I'm willing to fight for us, even if it means facing the consequences of my actions. Just don't give up on me. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but doubt lingered like a shadow. What if I can't? What if I can't forgive you? What if this is too much for me to handle? Her gaze dropped to the floor, and I watched as her shoulders slumped in defeat. Then I'll accept that, but I hope you'll at least let me try. The weight of her words hung in the air, and I felt the flicker of hope battling against the ache in my chest. I need time, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Time to figure out if I can trust you again. Take all the time you need, she replied softly, her expression shifting from desperation to resignation. I'll be here, waiting. As I walked out of the kitchen, the tension between us felt palpable. I didn't know how to reconcile the love I felt for her with the betrayal that lingered in the air. Could I really forgive her? Was I ready to take that leap of faith again? The following days were filled with an awkward silence, a chasm between us that seemed to widen with each passing hour. I could sense Jessica's attempts to reach out, to bridge the gap, but I felt like a stone wall. Every time she tried to engage me in conversation, I found myself retreating further into my thoughts, replaying the moment I discovered her betrayal like a broken record. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find Jessica sitting at the kitchen table, a notebook open in front of her. She looked up as I entered, a nervous smile crossing her face. Hey, I've been working on a list of ways we can reconnect and rebuild trust, she said, her voice hopeful. I raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping in. A list? Yeah, I thought it might help us both focus on our goals moving forward, she explained, flipping the notebook around to show me the neatly written ideas. I skimmed the page, the outlines of her thoughts jumping out at me. Couples therapy, weekly date nights, honest communication. Each suggestion felt like a reminder of how far we had fallen. This all seems organized, I remarked, trying to hide my discomfort. I know it sounds cheesy, she admitted, biting her lip, but I really want to work on this. I want us to heal. Jessica, I said, my voice softening, I appreciate the effort, but healing isn't as simple as a list. This is going to take time, and I can't promise I'll be okay right away. I understand, she replied, her voice steady, but I want you to know I'm committed to this. No more secrets, no more lies. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as Jessica slept beside me, the weight of her presence both comforting and suffocating. My heart was torn in two. The woman I loved lay next to me, yet I couldn't shake the betrayal that lurked in my mind. As I drifted off to sleep, I resolved to give this a chance, to explore the possibility of forgiveness. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a long and tumultuous journey. Days turned into weeks, and while we attempted to navigate our new reality, the trust between us remained fragile. Therapy became a regular fixture in our lives, an awkward yet necessary step toward rebuilding what had been lost. I found myself opening up about my feelings, the anger, the betrayal, and surprisingly, a flicker of hope that things could improve. But just as I began to believe in the possibility of healing, my world was rocked again. One evening, as I returned from work, I found Jessica sitting on the couch, her face pale and her hands trembling. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "About what?" I asked, my heart racing with dread. "I got a message from Jason," she confessed, her eyes brimming with tears. "He wants to meet." The air around us grew thick with tension as I struggled to comprehend her words. "What? Why would you even entertain that?" "I don't want to, but he says he wants closure too, and I think it might help me move on," she pleaded. "Move on? What does that even mean?" I snapped, anger flooding my veins. "You've already hurt me once. Why should I trust you to handle this delicately?" "I thought if I met him just once, it might help us both put the past behind us," she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, and the weight of betrayal crashed down again. "So what? You're willing to open up old wounds just to get closure? What if this leads you back into his arms?" "I don't want to go back to him," she cried, her voice breaking. "I just want to be free of it all." "Free? You think meeting him will help you be free?" I said, frustration boiling over. "You're playing with fire, Jess. You have no idea how dangerous this is for us." Tears streamed down her face as she reached for my hand. "I swear I'll never betray you again. I just need to do this. For me, for us, please." I pulled my hand away, my heart racing as I processed her request. "You don't get to ask for this. If you truly want to move forward, you need to cut ties. No more meetings, no more contact. I won't stand for this." The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating, as I watched her crumble beneath the weight of my words. "I thought we were in this together," she whispered, the hurt evident in her eyes. "We were, but if you go through with this, I can't be a part of it," I replied firmly, feeling the last threads of our connection fraying. "I understand," she said quietly, wiping her tears, "but I hope you'll reconsider. I'm trying to do this for us." I turned away, feeling a deep pit in my stomach. I didn't know if I could navigate the turbulent waters of our relationship any longer. As days turned into nights, I felt the distance growing again, a chasm that felt insurmountable. Every attempt at communication felt strained, filled with unspoken words that hung in the air like a thick fog. I could sense Jessica's struggle to prove herself, but each time she reached out, I found myself pulling away. Then came the moment I dreaded most. One evening, as I prepared for bed, I noticed Jessica's phone lighting up on the table. Against my better judgment, I picked it up, heart racing. The name that flashed across the screen made my blood run cold. Jason. I stood frozen, staring at the device as it buzzed with new messages. The fight or flight instinct kicked in, and I felt my anger rising like a tidal wave. Without thinking, I opened the message thread, my heart pounding in my chest. The messages were filled with playful banter, casual comments that felt intimate and familiar. Each word felt like a dagger to my heart, reminding me of the connection they had forged while I was left in the dark. "Hey, how have you been? Missing our talks. Can we meet again? Maybe we could grab coffee?" Rage coursed through me as I dropped the phone, my fists clenching at my sides. I couldn't believe she had been lying to me again, still entertaining the possibility of rekindling the connection. "Jessica," I yelled, my voice echoing through the house. "Get in here." She appeared in the doorway, her eyes widening in shock as she took in my expression. "What's wrong?" "This," I shouted, holding up her phone, the screen still glowing with Jason's messages. "You promised. You said you were done with him. What the hell is going on?" Her face went pale as she saw the messages, and for a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. "I didn't mean to. I thought I could handle it," she stammered, guilt flooding her features. "I was just being friendly. I swear it didn't mean anything." "Friendly? This is beyond friendly. This is a betrayal all over again," I screamed, the hurt spilling out of me in waves. "I can't believe you would even entertain this after everything." "I'm sorry. I thought I could be friends without it leading back to him," she pleaded, desperation lacing her words. "Friends? You think that's how this works? You're still caught up in this fantasy while I'm here, trying to pick up the pieces." The tension in the room escalated, and I could see her crumble under the weight of my accusations. "I'm trying to make this right. Please, don't do this," she begged, tears streaming down her cheeks. My heart ached, but the rage burned brighter. "How can I trust you? Every time I try to let my guard down, you give me another reason to doubt you. You've made it impossible. Please, I'll end it. Just give me a chance," she cried, her voice raw with emotion. I stared at her, my chest heaving as I weighed my options. I wanted to believe her, to trust that she could turn this around. But how could I when it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall? I can't do this anymore, I finally said, my voice breaking. I can't keep putting my heart on the line only to have it shattered again. Don't say that, she cried, reaching for my hand again, but I pulled away. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about trust and respect. I don't know if we can ever get back to where we were, I replied, my heart heavy with resignation. I'll fix it, I promise. I'll end it with him, she insisted, desperation pouring from her. I need you to understand that this isn't something you can just fix with a simple apology, I said, my voice steady but pained. You've hurt me too deeply, and I don't know if I can find my way back. The silence enveloped us, a chasm filled with unspoken words and emotions that felt insurmountable. I turned away, unable to face her anymore, the ache in my chest too deep to ignore. That night, I lay awake, the weight of our unraveling relationship pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I had fought so hard to hold on to what we had, but with each revelation, I felt myself slipping further away. The once vibrant love we had shared now felt tainted, overshadowed by betrayal and heartbreak. As the hours dragged on, I found myself at a crossroads. I could either keep fighting for something that seemed irreparably broken or let go and walk away from the memories that haunted me. For now, I chose silence. The decision loomed over me like a storm cloud, and I didn't know what the future held. All I knew was that this was a battle I couldn't fight alone, and the outcome would determine the course of our lives forever. The next day brought more uncertainty, and as I faced Jessica at breakfast, I felt the heaviness in the air. We exchanged fleeting glances, both unsure of how to proceed. Do you want to talk? She finally asked, breaking the silence. I don't know what to say, I replied honestly. I feel lost. Me too, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I want to find our way back, even if it's hard. Maybe we need some space, I suggested, my heart aching at the thought. Space, she echoed, the sadness in her voice unmistakable. Yeah, to think about everything. To figure out what we want, I said, forcing myself to hold her gaze. She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. If that's what you need, I'll respect it, but I hope you'll still come back. I couldn't promise her anything, but I hoped that space would allow both of us to reflect on our feelings and make sense of the chaos. As I packed a bag and stepped outside, I felt the weight of our relationship hanging in the balance. This wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning of sorts. I had no idea where this path would lead, but deep down, I knew I had to take it. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to find my way through the darkness. With one last look at our home, I walked away, leaving behind a chapter filled with pain, betrayal, and the flicker of hope that somehow, one day, we could start anew.